So there's so much about it that if you replace wherever you see the word you with I, how I feel about me, how, how I believe in me and those kinds of things. And you could go either way with it. It's not everybody's got a God thing. That's okay. No good, bad, right, or wrong, whatever works for you. But I do know that every one of us does what she was saying not to do in there, which is, you know, to be felt held, to be felt important, to be felt loved, those kinds of things. So, not the point of my story today. I was listening to some music this morning because I got up early. I always get up early on house cleaner day because I have to clean the house before the house cleaners get here. So, I just felt like when I heard that, I said, oh, I got to share that with the group. Now, when I sent out the email for today, I was pretty succinct about the fact that we've talked about every which way between listening to other people, listening to me talk about mindset and everything. So I'm going to start every week for the next few weeks actually talking about real estate tactics. And you've heard me ad nauseum talk about please. You got nothing going on. If you just did something as simple as started calling everybody that was in your database, everybody that was in your database, and started just chatting with them and seeing how they were doing, that your life would be so much different in the real estate world in a very short amount of time. However, I can definitely tell that that's not the one thing that everybody needs to hear. And we talk about the word action, 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 action. Do something. Everything works, nothing doesn't. So, and for those of you just joining us who've missed us, we did play a song this morning by Lauren Daigle, and I'll probably include the link for the song, but I'm going to include the link for the video that showed the lyrics like I used today, because I think it's very powerful to be reading those while you hear the song. All right. So when I think about action, let's talk seriously about what that means for each of you individually. And that is, what are some of the things that we could be doing outside of talking to the people we already know? Well, first and foremost, today we're going to talk a little bit more about listings. I've kind of talked about them before, probably as recently as the last 2 months, but I felt like it would be a good start. There are hundreds of ways for you to become a top listing agent. And the thing that people gravitate towards the most is the thing that is the least uncomfortable. So I know, because of being a coach, a speaker, a trainer, and being a real estate agent myself who's done all of these, that the way that people most want to get listings is spend a ton of freaking money on postcards, send them out every month, and just wait around and see who calls them and says, come list my house. All right. How many of you feel like that might be the thing that happens for you? Okay, don't all raise your hand at once. But because it doesn't mean any direct contact with anybody. Do you get that? Like, we avoid contact. We avoid anything. Oh, you want me to go knock on their door? Yes, I do. Well, what if they answer? Well, it'd be a good time to say hi, right? So the idea is that the more actual communication we have, the bigger chance that we have of creating the relationship that takes us to a listing. Now, is there anything wrong with farming by postcard? So in our series now, where we're going to start talking about what it takes to be a better lead generator, when people say the word door knocking, the majority of real estate agents instantly group it all into one thing. There are so many different ways, methods, and purposes for just the simple act of door knocking that you would be shocked. And the intention that you create before you go knock on the doors, before you leave your house, which is when you're the most nervous, right? Oh, I'm going out to knock on doors. That intention that you create about what's going to happen in that day is so critical. Meaning, I intend to pick up 3 leads today. I intend to get a listing appointment today. Like, you've got to do that. But let's talk about this. And I love that it's being recorded so you can go back and be able to go through these things. Heather, you didn't have to turn off your, oh, good. I'm glad you turned your camera back on. It's good to have you, Heather Richards. So here's what I want you to be thinking about. What are the different purposes or the different impetuses, the different reasons why I would go out and knock on doors. Well, let me give you one. I wrote a little thing for Keller Williams back when I was with them in the the early parts of the 2000s, between 2002 and 2005, something called relationship farming. All right. Now, take notes on this, because relationship farming is a difficult thing to do because it requires a complete control of your time and your schedule for it to work properly. Now, I want to make sure that you know I don't get to take credit for relationship farming. The idea was brought to me by a guy who retired from Bank of America as an assistant vice president, came into real estate. He was already old. Okay. Now, I feel I'm almost 64. I don't feel old, but he was around the age I am now when he came into real estate, because he had just retired from B of A, had a nice pension. And what he started doing was he developed a neighborhood, which was literally the neighborhood he lived in. Okay. But it doesn't have to be. But here's the deal. The count of the number of houses that you can have in relationship farming has to be based on your ability to knock on every single door of these houses every 3 weeks. Okay. Now, there's a lady that gets on sometimes. She doesn't get on all the time, but we've become good friends through this call. And she's here in San Jose, California. And her name is Regina. Now, I don't see Regina on today, but she's amazing, very learning-based, wonderful lady, sends great messages to me. But the reason I say that is Regina always says, Rick, can we get more meat and potatoes? She doesn't say it that way, in the call, meaning she wants less of the mindset and what she calls fluff and more of the meat and potatoes. So we're about to dig into a big plate of meat and potatoes. So if you're a vegan or vegetarian, just imagine it's potatoes and big chunky vegetables. All right. So what I'm saying now is that hi Gina, good to see you. That when you do relationship farming, remember, I'm going to talk to you about a bunch of ways over the next several weeks to door knock, but we're starting with number one, what we call relationship farming. Now, Gary Keller did some statistics that were in the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And he said that if you will deliver a piece of marketing to every home in your farm once a month, that it will take between 24 to 30 months to start seeing regular return. Do you know that up to 85% of all agents stop after a year to a year and a half if they haven't gotten a lead? Hold on one second. Sorry, my dog had surgery and he's trying to move around. He's not allowed to move around. So I had to be the alpha voice again. You don't want to hear me with my alpha voice, believe me. No, I'm kidding. All right. So here's what I mean by that. You don't want to pick a number of homes that you couldn't possibly get to once every 3 weeks. And this is what I mean. Let's say you were able to determine that you can knock on 50 doors in 3 hours. Now you might say, how do you know that number, Rick? Why is it 3 hours? Why isn't it 2? It's going to be different for everybody. You know what it's going to be different based on? Well, how big are the lots in the area that you're door knocking? Like, how long does it take you to go from one door to the other? That's one of them. Number two, what's the possibility of people being home? Because when you knock on a door and someone answers, you're at that door a lot longer than you are when no one answers. Are you starting to see what I'm talking about? So if I can do 50 homes in 3 hours, then in 30 hours, I can do 500 homes. Do you get it? So you start to say, well, if I'm going to hit 500 homes every 3 weeks, that means I've got to commit 30 hours every 3 weeks. Are you starting to see the math? Now, where would I fit those in? The reason I want you to know this is relationship farming is truly that. You're building long-term relationships over a period of time such that no matter what real estate need they may have, selling that house they live in, buying another house, or what happens quite a bit is they end up referring you to their son, their daughter, their friends, people in other areas, because they can't believe you keep coming by every 3 weeks and being a nice person and delivering an item of value. What is the item of value? Whatever the hell you want. That might be a calendar of community events. Once not every single time, but every once in a while, you'll bring the comparable sales figures by. You always want to have something in your hand to leave. And the last thing that should come out of your mouth after every door, none of you would ever guess what the last thing should be. It's not goodbye. It's not, don't ever slam the door in my face again, you bitch. It's none of that. What's the last thing you say before you leave that door is, I'll see you in 3 weeks. Just like that, with a big grin. They slam the door in your face. You see the door slamming. Just before it slams, you go, see you in 3 weeks, right? You've got to be, number one, as consistent as the sun and the day. Like, you got to be consistent. My buddy Orv, the guy's name was Orval, Orval, that taught me this. No, this wasn't in the this was in the 90s when I was running an office that belonged to someone else. And his name was Orval Friesen. And there was those little chocolate candies that were called Friesen or something like that. And he would tape a little piece of candy to every piece of paper that he dropped off at a home. But anyway, most people wouldn't do that anymore because of COVID. I don't know. But so here's what he did, though. He'd knock on every single door and he'd share with them his item of value. And he'd say, it's so good to see you again. How's everything? Is there anything I can do for you? And then he would leave them with that item of value. He wouldn't say, you selling soon? Because he was creating relationships over a long period of time. All right. There's nothing wrong with saying, are you selling soon? Don't get that. But for relationship farming, it was about becoming a regular in the neighborhood. This is what Orv used to say to me. Orv was about 6'2" and probably weighed 165. So you get a picture. He wasn't just a white guy. He was almost see-through. Okay. Very white. Like, it scared me. I'm like, dude, you need some sun. Anyway, but here's the thing. He was mild-mannered, hard to get a word out of him. And in the neighborhood he lived in, over the years he lived there, it went from being English as the primary language to Afghan being the primary language in the neighborhood. But it didn't stop him. He didn't look Afghani, he didn't sound Afghani, and he certainly didn't speak Afghani. But he continued to be the #1 listing agent in that little neighborhood for years. And I'll tell you why, because he was consistent about his 3 weeks. So here's what I want you to do the math on really quickly. If you go to a door once a month, how many times a year have you gone to the door? 12. Thank you, Robert, for putting that up. If you go to a door once every 3 weeks, how many times a year do you go? I'll do the math. It's 17. Okay. 17 is 40% more than 12, maybe a little more than that. Okay. 40 to 45% more you're going to the house, which means Gary Keller's theory about if you go once a month for two to 2.5 years, you'll develop consistency. It actually takes less than 6 months to develop consistency during relationship farming because you're going once every 3 weeks. All right. Does it have to be planned out and timed? Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to figure out what are those times you're going. Now, one of the other things I do with relationship farming, let's look at the whole big picture. First, an item of value goes with you every time. All of you thinking, what do I say? Here's what you say. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're going. That's all. Start the conversation, get it going. Get to the point where you say, oh yeah, I'm just the local real estate expert. Now, if you do happen to live in your neighborhood that you're door knocking, it doesn't have to be your neighborhood. It could be somewhere else. But if you do happen to live there, say, I'm not just a realtor, I'm your neighbor. Do that, kind of point in the direction of your home. I'm not just a realtor, I'm your neighbor, right? So it's just a matter of starting to get known. What Orv used to say was this: I want to be as regular as the postman, okay, but not every day. Meaning he wanted everybody to look out. He used to describe this to our classes in the office. He'd say, I want people to look out the window of their home, see me walking up the street and go, oh, that's just Orv, right? Like, not worry, like, who is that? What's that guy want? Who's that guy coming to our door? He was incredibly consistent. And if you rated his gregarious personality, with 10 being super gregarious and 1 being a moot person, like somebody that wasn't saying anything. He was only at about 2 or 3. He wasn't the most gregarious guy. But the fact is, he even told me, guys, this is funny. I asked him, I said, so you knock on every single door every 3 weeks. And I said, do you consistently get people that open the door and talk to you now that you've been doing it for so long? He goes, yeah. And he said, but there's one door that I don't knock on anymore. And I said, one in the whole neighborhood? He goes, yes, super nice lady, Rick. But every time she opens the door, she wants me to come in for tea. And he goes, I end up losing like 45 minutes to an hour. He says, so now when I go up to that door, I just leave the paper and I sneak away. So hopefully she won't hear me. And I said, well, Orv, that's just not like you. He goes, it is, because now it's more, I got time. I only got a certain amount of time and I want to be done. Right. So lots can happen. And what I want you to be thinking about is right now, as you think of this as an idea that might work for you. Patrice, I often think about you on this because when I was younger, I wanted to farm Northgate like nobody's business, but there was a guy there. He just kind of owned the area. But if I thought about it today, I'd say, well, guess what? Somebody, in fact, Marlise, you were asking me the other day, sweetheart, about, oh, but so-and-so owns the neighborhood, right? And I said, well, any neighborhood can be owned by 3 different agents, not just one. We, the consumer, and the other real estate agent get the perception someone owns it. But if you had 30% market share in any one area, that would be huge. And I know people who have 40, 45, 50% in an area, but guess what? Somebody could not like that realtor because maybe they sold a house for less money at one point than they thought it was, than someone else in the neighborhood thought it was worth. They don't like your haircut. They don't like how you appear in social media. There's a million things that would possibly keep people from necessarily loving the agent of the area that you and I perceive as the one that's most popular. Okay, there's always room for another agent, always. Now, if you're doing relationship farming, you are going to be out consistencying them. That's not a word, but you will out consistent the other agent if you start doing relationship farming. And remember, again, I'm going to say this over and over again. It doesn't have to be where you live. I personally prefer it to be around where I live because I don't want to be the guy who walks out of his house in the morning and sees another real estate sign in his neighbor's lawn. I would rather just go, and blow my brains out. And it happened to me when my kids were small. This guy, I'd be playing catch. We lived inside of a court and I'd be playing catch with my boys and the guy 2 doors down would come over and go, Rick, how are the values? And I wanted to be sarcastic and say the same as they were day before yesterday when you asked me, but you can't do that, right? I go, oh my God, the market's great. This is many years ago. My boys are in their 30s now. So my boys were in their early teens. And sure enough, a couple years go by and freaking list with a Remax office. I come, like literally, it's a Saturday morning. I'm getting my boys up and we come outside to play catch. And I'm like, and my son, Joey, who was only like 11 at the time, says, what's the matter, Dad? I said, look at that. He goes, yeah, it's a for sale sign. Why are you so upset? And I said, it's not my for sale sign. He goes, oh, good point. That's what my son says to me. Good point that it's not my for sale sign, right? So that's why I like doing relationship farming in the immediate area that I live. Again, it doesn't have to be that. Now, remember what I said. The last thing you're going to say is, I'll see you in 3 weeks. You want people to get ready to see you every 3 weeks. And if they thought you were coming by every 3 weeks just to say, are you ready to sell yet? Guess what? They'd never open the door. Now let's talk about timing. Write this down. People always say, what times do I go? If you go on Saturdays, go somewhere between 9 and 1. If you go on Sundays, go somewhere between 2 and 6, depending on whether it's daylight savings time or not. Okay. If it's daylight savings time, never go past 5 o'clock because it starts to get dark early. Those are the only 2 consistent days about hours. Why do we do that? Because Sunday mornings, people like to be left alone. Either they go to church or they sleep in or whatever. So if you're going to go on a Sunday, make it afternoon. If you're going to go on a Saturday, make it morning because that's when people are out cutting their lawn, washing their car, doing the kinds of things. So you've got a bigger likelihood of running into people that are already outside. Monday through Friday, ladies and gentlemen, keep track and shift it up. Keep track and shift it up. How many people were at home when you went between 9 and 11 or 9 and 12? How many people were home when you went between 11 and 2? Keep track of that stuff. That way you can continue to alter it. Maybe Mary's home between 11 to 1 when you went, but when you went 3 to 5, she wasn't home, right? You start to get used to it. You're keeping track of everything. Everything. Have lists and lists of the addresses so that every time you go out, you grab another blank list of the addresses so you can check off home, not home, conversation, not conversation. Okay. You are going to be the most consistent person in the history of relationship farming. I'm going to stop right there for a minute. How many of you would be willing to unmute and tell me from so far what we've said about relationship farming, how many of you would like to give it a go? Maybe. Be honest.
I definitely want
I certainly would.
Okay, wait, that was Lucky, I think, and Colin?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with Colin. Colin's in Oklahoma. Colin, any questions about what I said or how you would do it?
really not any questions. It's a lot of good information. I actually just found a neighborhood I got postcards ready for, and there's about 300 homes, and it's probably about a mile from where I live.
Okay. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Don't undersell yourself. Colin, depending on the big size of the lots, are they like acre lots or what? Like
They're like 0.2-ish.
Oh, okay, good. So they're fifth of an acre lots. You would,
Yeah.
I would definitely do more than 300 if possible, but if it is a succinct neighborhood and 300 is the count, then go with it, right? That way I'm not, my comps are going to be consistent. They're all built by the same builder. You've got to think of all of that stuff, guys. If you're combining neighborhoods, right? When I used to do it in my own neighborhood, when I was married the first time, there was different builders and different developments because one builder built like 68 homes, another built 200 and something homes, another built 500. So I would just say, okay, this is how many I'm going to do for my relationship farming, cut it off at that, have it be the same homes, get to your title company, let them prepare a sheet for you that has them all. I could even say, oh, on this street, you know, I only want these numbers. I want odd on this side, even on this side, whatever. So call and get help from your title company because you're going to say, I'm going to be your best customer and it's all going to come out of this new relationship farm that I have. Lucky, any questions from you if you were going to do this?
Not really. To be very honest, I have really not done this before. So I have a certain areas that I was intending to do, and talking to you today will give me some ideas as to how I want to do it.
Okay, beautiful. I love that. So as you guys think about this, I didn't mention this, but one of the other reasons I like doing relationship farming where I live, even if you, like I talked to, wait, Marlise, can I share that part of our conversation, honey? Okay, so Marlise here is taking her test next Wednesday. We're very excited for her. By next Thursday, she's going to be a licensed agent in Northern California. But the reason, so I was telling Marlise and she was saying, okay, I like my neighborhood, but I really aspire to live in this neighborhood. So I said, well, you can do both, right? So she could do both, but it's going to be a lot of hours of door knocking. But I want her to be where she's inspired to go out and do that door knocking. And if it's not inspiring to her, I talked to an agent, oh my God, 20 years ago. And I said, don't you farm your neighborhood where you live? He goes, no. And I said, it doesn't bother you if there's a house for sale on your street and it's not your sign? He goes, no. He said, I don't want to talk, when I'm home, I don't want to talk about real estate to anybody. I don't want to go out in my front yard and even say I'm a realtor. Well, talk about like a completely different outlook. I was like, what a good idea. And then I remembered that when in my younger days, I sold lots of homes to cops because a lot of cops went in my mom's restaurant. And I'd say, why are you living out here? It's so far from where you're a cop. And he'd go, because I don't want to walk out on my front lawn and see somebody I arrested last week, right? He said, I just want to be left alone. Nobody needs to know I'm a cop. Nobody needs anything, right? So I started to get that, like, I get it, right? So I don't know, I'm not that way. I just like, I'll talk to real estate, to anyone about real estate. I'll peek my head over someone's fence and go, want to talk about real estate? You know, so it really is a matter of how you want to do it. But I'm going to tell you, like, Oh, I see Teresa, like Teresa Zoki's on the line, and her little neighborhood is incredible. It's gorgeous, right? And for her area, kind of like nice prices. So I would definitely be, you know, if you like, if you're going to live there, I'm sure you like it enough to continue living there. No reason not to do it. But we were doing, if you think about doing 200 homes a week, it's actually not hard to do 250 homes a week, which would mean you could do a relationship farm of 750 homes, because you would only knock on 50 doors a day, 5 days a week. But remember, like if we do what Colin is saying, is Colin still here? Oh, there he is. You moved on my screen, but Colin, like if you do 300 homes, you're saying I'm doing 100 a week, then maybe I do my whole first week of homes in the first 2 or 3 days, and then I can do other kinds of lead generation the rest of the week for other things, right? Remember, guys, we want to have 4 pillars of lead generation. So if you're now back, like we're back to doing open houses here in Northern California. So open houses could be relationship farming could be another pillar. So open houses, relationship farming, and then maybe my database. Think about the different pillars of income. So you don't want this to be all consuming that you don't do anything else. My friend Allie from Sonoma County is on here. Say hi, Allie. Allie is, I'm sure I have shoes older than Allie, but she is an amazing mom and significant other, and she's studying to get her license, but she's not even letting that stop. She made herself a little business card that said business development, didn't claim to be a realtor. She's talking to people about land, and it's amazing. So your desires, your push has to come from inside of you. But relationship farming to me is probably one of the best ways to create something long-term. Now, I am going to go to the results for a minute. Remember what I said in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and if you haven't read that book, I really request that you do. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. It has some real foundational basics about understanding your activities and what kind of results should come out of them. Okay. So, and some of that stuff's changed, but not enough for it to be worrisome to you. In other words, it's still one of the best ways to do that. Hold on one sec. So, all right. Now, here are what's happening. This is what happened for Orville Friesen. All right. He got 3 listings in his first 6 months. And you might say, well, that's not a lot. Actually, from starting a brand new farm to getting 3 listings in the first 6 months is freaking incredible. Okay. In his first year, he closed 22 transactions as a result of his door knocking in that development, and only 7 transactions came from that were actually in the development. Okay. Meaning he had a buyer that bought from him. He had buyers that bought from him. He had a couple people that listed. No, he had about 4 or 5 that listed, but a lot of other transactions came from talking to the people there that gave him like a buyer here or a seller there that weren't in there. So 22 closed transactions in his first year. Don't expect to have those results because you may be disappointed. If you get those results, I'm going to congratulate you up and down, left and right. You can do a lot of things with this. For instance, sponsoring garage sale days, delivering, you know, a lot of people when I was younger and lived at home with my mom and dad, guys would come by, realtors would come by with truckloads and drop pumpkins off right before Halloween. And I thought, gosh, and then you'd see rotted pumpkins on the homes, you know, sitting on the porch that somebody never picked up. So when I became a realtor, I would go down to the pumpkin patch, make an agreement with the guy to have certificates. He'd put his bank statement stamp on the back of each one, and I could give it out. And I would pass out those certificates to people and say, you've got a free pumpkin down at so-and-so pumpkin patch. And I'd go by his office once a week. We'd do it for 3 weeks. And I'd go by his office once a week. He had them saved, which how much I owed him, and I wrote a check. And it always turned out to be tons less than if I had put a pumpkin on everybody's porch, right? So because so many people didn't use the certificate. It's okay, right? So lots of great things that you can do out of this. Okay, so Patrice, my good friend, says, I love the idea of farming, but the thought of knocking on a door petrifies me. Yet I can perform on a stage, but I can't knock on a stranger's door. Go figure. So Patrice is just warms me. So it's a lot different performing on a stage because you're not this close to everybody and talking to them. You're sort of performing for a group. And when you're door knocking, guess what? It's just you and them at the door, right? So I understand the whole petrifies thing. And the only thing that gets you over it is doing it. It's the only thing that gets you over it. Now, somebody asked me, 15 years ago about this. They said, hey, Rick, I read your thing on relationship farming. What if you just walked and dropped every 3 weeks? I said, you'd still get results, just not as good. Now, if you walked and dropped, but you did a lot of your walking and dropping on Saturday and Sunday, or even Friday afternoon, then you'd have a better result anyway, because you're going to just naturally bump into people that are out and about. All right. Now, I say that because I'm born and raised in California, and we never have weather so bad that, like in Michigan, where your earlobes would fall off if you were, walking out and about in the 30 below weather. But the same idea is true. The more people you get to talk to, the better off. So, so to kind of wrap this up in a pretty bow, thank you, Lucky, for being on. No worries. But to wrap this up is, what's this say, Debbie? The certificate is great for many of the holidays, Christmas trees, tree farm, summer. Yes, absolutely good idea, Debbie, to use the certificate idea as a way of getting people involved in an event without actually bringing the event to them. One of my most successful things when I farmed regularly was definitely arranging a garage sale day. And it would be all of my open houses signs, and that people would put, garage sale on them. They could come and borrow open house signs, and they would put the, paste a piece of paper over that said garage sale. But it was the most interaction I had with the people at any point, because I was the one that would do the advertising, and we would, put up the signs early in the morning, that kind of thing. So now I just wanted to talk just about that. I am going to talk further about regular farming on our next call, regular farming, which is the once a month thing. I do want to say this about relationship farming. I want you to remember that the last thing you say before they shut the door is, I'll see you in 3 weeks, with a big grin on your face. See you in 3 weeks. If they were angry for you being at the front door, see you in 3 weeks, big smile, right? Because if you're there every 3 weeks, by the third time you go, which is 9 weeks, they can't be grumpy anymore, because you're warning them you're coming. They're coming. They could avoid the door. They'll catch your flyer. But guess what? Your word, when you say, I'll see you in 3 weeks, if you don't, you lied to them. Nobody wants to lie to their business partners, their farm, okay? Their relationship farm. So you want to say, I'll see you in 3 weeks, and be a little less than 3 weeks for sure, definitely not more. So it will be one of the most consistent things you do. Colin and Lucky's not on anymore, but I'd be very encouraged to hear your results. I need you to track everything, Colin, not for the sake of us seeing if it works, but for your own sake. You'll start to develop a file for every street you're knocking on. And in that file, every time a house comes up for sale, goes pending, or sold, you print up a hard copy and put it in your file. Now, I know there's ways to do it without paper. If you got it, go for it. But have a little file in your an Excel sheet or something, so that when you're in those areas knocking, someone does say, come to my house and talk to me about selling, you can go back to that file, and there was everything in the last several years that ever happened on that street, right? And you can, of course, always use the MLS to run the comps. And you can run all that off the MLS, but I would definitely be creating a file so that you become the expert. When you're starting off at relationship farming, the way to sound like the expert is to do a good hour to 2 hours worth of research on the history of that neighborhood. And as you're door knocking, one of the best things you can do is find somebody that's lived there since it was brand new, and see if they still have all the builder stuff from when they bought it. I mean, I just sold a house that was 58 years old. The lady bought it brand new in 1963 for $13,000. I just sold it for her for $1.4 million. And she's 88 years old. She had all the stuff from the builder and she let me have it. She said, here, you might want to use this. And of course, I'm going to pass it on to the buyer, but not before I copy it. So I know the builder information and the floor plan information. So lots of good things. The way I say it is this. How many of you remember Bewitched, the television show? Some of you watched it years later, but everybody. So if you watched Bewitched, you remember there was a nosy neighbor and her name, Gladys Kravitz. How many of you remember now that I said her name, go, yeah, Gladys Kravitz, right? She'd peek out and see things over at Samantha's house, right? So those Gladys Kravitz, by the way, is who you want to find when you're door knocking. You want to become Gladys's best friend. And if Gladys tells you information, you bring her a Starbucks card the next time you're walking. Like, you reward the nosy behavior. All right? Anne Marie, I see you laughing. So it's okay to reward that nosy behavior. And Larry, were you going to say something, my man?
No, sir. Sorry, I just came off mute.
Oh, that's okay. I just thought maybe you wanted to say something. Yeah,
No, you good.
Whoever wrote that Gladys is your neighborhood watch is certainly Debbie. Yes. And she will tell you stuff. Did you know Mary and Tom across the street are thinking of getting a divorce? When she would tell me stuff like that in my farm, I would just beeline over to Tom. I knock on the door. Hi guys, just checking in. Know anybody that's selling? You know, after I'd seen him for a while. And I swear to God, I do that every time. Finally, like 6 months after Gladys told me that, Tom says, you're going to need to come by here sometime, Rick. We're going to need to sell the house. He said it with a real serious look. I go, everything okay? You moving? He goes, yeah, we're getting a divorce. So I said, okay, yeah, glad to help. Even though I'd known for 6 months that they were getting a divorce. So, all right. So think about relationship farming. Would it work for you? I think it works for everyone. The reason it doesn't work is lack of consistency. So you've got to be consistent. Get a number of homes that works for you. All right. Any last minute questions, comments, thoughts? No?
Rick,
Okay.
what are your thoughts on door knocking with another person?
I love it. But remember, this is going to be about consistency. Now, in farming, and there's a bunch of other door knocking I'll talk to you guys about over the next few weeks, Patrice, door knocking with another person is always good. If you're going to do relationship farming with another person, then you need also for that to be consistent, meaning you're always showing up together. You want the people to be used to whatever it is. And it's only going to take 3 to 5 times of going before they're really used to whatever that is. You get what I'm saying, Patrice? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to depend on all of you to tell me if you need help with that. You all know how to get a hold of me, or you can come back to the Friday coaching call and say, hey, Rick, I had an experience. And Colin, I'd love to hear from you after you've done it. All right. Okay.
So do you recommend door knocking all the houses like in 2 or 3 days, or spread it out?
Well, if you're doing 300, 2 or 3 days, because when you do, have you ever done 50 at one time?
Yes.
Okay. So don't you feel kind of tired after 50?
I would say yes, are getting tired for sure.
Yeah. So, and that was always my indicator. I remember doing once, I counted, I didn't really count, but I had everything on my sheet. And I was like, damn, I'm tired. And I looked and it had been 63 doors and it had been 2 hours and 45 minutes, which meant I had a few more not answer than before. And I always have a clipboard with my yellow pad, so I'm keeping track of conversations, addresses, because I also want to send handwritten thank you notes to the people who had a longer conversation with me or maybe asked a question. Yeah, remember that, Colin. But no, I would spread it out, Colin, so that you're at least in the neighborhood once or twice every week of the 3 weeks, because then they're starting to see you more. Even if you didn't knock on my door, but I saw you walking over there, you get it? I'm like, oh, I see that guy everywhere. The other thing you would do is if it's not the neighborhood around where you live, every once in a while, even if you're not door knocking, just drive through the neighborhood. And if you see people, wave at them. Okay. You're just driving through. How long does that take? 38 seconds, right? You drive through, you see a human walking their dog or everything, because then they're going to remember your face. Oh, that's the guy that waved at me before. Oh, that's the guy that's knocking on the door. You've got to get consistency. By the way, Orv did it for 2.5 years. And then he went to mailing postcards every 3 weeks. People didn't even notice he was missing because they just kept assuming since they were now getting the postcard. But you can't not abandon 2 full years of every 3 weeks, okay? All right. I'm going to save this one. I'm going to call it the relationship farming call, and then you guys can all access it, okay? All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Love you all.
Thank you.
See you next Friday. More good stuff. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.